Thank you for joining us. This is Retirement Designed Differently with financial advisor Billy Voiles. He is the founder of Fundamental Wealth Designs, putting together retirement planning strategies for you all around the state of Minnesota. Mr. Billy Voiles, how are you doing this week?
We're doing fantastic. How are you, Spike?
I'm okay. I think today we really want to talk about some things that are designing themselves a little bit differently, in fact. Some differences in retirement planning today that we've seen, I guess, let's say from 20 or 30 years ago, how things have changed. I would like to start, if you don't mind, with estate planning. Now, and the reason I'm going to say this on the beginning of the show, because some people might be reaching for their clicker and going, I don't need to worry about estate planning. I don't have $50 million. I don't have $100 million. We don't need to worry about that. What is your thoughts on estate planning? Is that changed in your mind, and who needs to consider it?
Yeah, and we work with everyday families in Minnesota, right? So, you know, you have 500,000, you got $1 million, you got $5 million. Like, your millionaires next door are really the type of clients that we tend to work with, right? But I am going to start with a little bit of a story about one of our favorite artists of all times. In fact, he was simply known as the artist at one point. But Mr.
Yes.
Prince, right?
Yes.
Prince and his estate planning issues. Started at First Ave in Minneapolis, and everybody, I mean, when he passed away several years ago, they partied at First Ave for, I think, 3 nights in a row and just jammed and played his music. And I know a lot of people that made a huge impact, you know, on their life was Prince's music. And he was an absolute artist when it came to it. And I've visited, you know, I believe it's in Chanhassen, I've visited, you know, his house, and it's now turned into a museum. And it's just an awesome place for you to visit and go see the history and everything that was Prince. But his estate was valued at $156 million when he passed away. And he died intestate, which is, he did not have a will.
Yeah.
So he did not have a will directing where this $156 million was to go. He did not have a trust to try to help protect against taxation. Or, frankly, the reason we know that it's 156 and was valued at 156 million is because he didn't have a trust. Because if he had a trust, there could have been a privacy factor in keeping it private from everyone to know their business. He ended up paying $9 million just in fees, administration fees, and penalties on taxes. This isn't the estate tax. This is $9 million in fees and taxes that could have been avoided with a properly structured will and estate plan. Without a will, one thing that happens is it just goes public record. So if you are a private person, you know, that might be one reason to go down the path of should I do, you know, a will or a trust or otherwise. But really what we're trying to do in simplifying this back down, Prince's story is tragic. Another one you can tell is Aretha Franklin's. I mean, there's a bunch of celebrity stories. But everyday people that we work with, someone came in a couple weeks ago, and her mom had passed away several months before, and she did not have a will, and it was just her and her sister. So not complicated. Right? Even without a will, it's a 50-50 distribution. But you still have to go and take that all through probate. Someone still is valuing the asset. Someone else is appointed by the court in order to figure out how to split those assets and where they're supposed to go, even though the rules are relatively simple. And it was months, and it was costly, and it cost them thousands of dollars just to settle her mom's simple estate, which was $400,000 or $500,000. It wasn't $10 million or $15 million. And they came in our office to basically say, you know what? I don't want my kids to go through what I just went through. I want to make sure all my beneficiaries are named. I want to make sure I have a transfer on death deed on the house. We are actually going to prepay our funerals. So that cost is taken off from a burden. They don't have to even figure out where to go to get the money from that. Because again, in these months that probate's trying to figure it out, you have a funeral with 10, 15, who knows how much, thousands of dollars of expense you got to come out of pocket and then be reimbursed from the estate later. It can be super complicated. And again, you go back to we're already stressed. You lost a parent in this instance, or perhaps someone that really, and so you're grieving and going through all this paperwork and and all of that can be handled up front with planning, proper documentation. But it does start with us just asking questions like, well, who does this go to? And why do you want it to go there? And how would you like it titled? And then we can get into more details.
That's why the new rules of retirement planning today, they're not the same as they were 30 or 40 years ago. You know, that easier nuclear family of grandma and grandpa, maybe a kid or two, and just, leaving assets down. Life is more complicated today. We have more of our own investment and retirement accounts, everything from beneficiaries. There's a lot of folks out there who've done a great job with real estate investing and building up. There's so many different parts and pieces. And as much as we loved the artist of Prince and everything he created, and just too soon, I think a bigger takeaway is not how big his estate was, is that when something happens unexpectedly, when we're taken too soon. And I would love to hope that every single one of our viewers out there lives to the age of 102 and lives a long, wonderful life and is able to be clear and lucid during those retirement years all the way to the end. But sometimes something happens where tragically we go a little bit earlier. So I would say new rules of retirement planning, we make it really simple. Should you consider estate planning? Do you have stuff or do you have loved ones? I think if it's yes to either of those, you need to do an estate plan.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not that difficult. Again, this is one of those things that I think like it becomes overwhelming and it feels like such a burden to get it done, and it feels like this like arduous process to go through, that it's not that difficult, because we can do some very basic directional estate planning when it comes to just ensuring beneficiaries are named properly on various accounts. You might not even need to go down the whole trust route. I think a will is appropriate in the vast majority of situations. Healthcare directives are also important to be able to just have on paper how you wish to be treated if you do go through some type of situation where you become incapacitated, which leads you to the concept of you should have a power of attorney on file as well to make sure that someone can make decisions on your behalf financially and otherwise if you are incapacitated. And that type of thing does happen like out of the blue. It's not like you plan for these sorts of things to happen. So we just want to make sure that things are in order prior to any of that happening. And again, you could do your estate planning first and then come back and we can complete your financial plan. We could do your financial plan first, make sure beneficiaries are all laid out and kind of tighten up, the legacy. We just want to make sure we do it in prompt order to make sure that you're taken care of if something happens.
We don't think you should delay it. If you've got loved ones and if you have assets, at the very least, you really do need to consider doing your will, if you have one, updating it. We've seen wills that are years and years old. The family dynamic has changed. Maybe you've moved states. Jurisdictions do matter on certain things like wills or trusts. But folks, these are things that I know you probably don't want to think about, but make sure that you're protecting your family. If you'd like to have the estate planning conversation, legacy, or let's just call it your protection conversation, well, I tell you what, we don't cost what an attorney does per hour. It is not $250 or $500 to sit down with Billy. We will talk about this and then decide if you need the help with an attorney. So call that phone number right now down on the bottom of the screen. Let's get you started on your own retirement design, including your estate strategy. More with Billy Boyles, financial advisor, right after this.
We met Billy, and he's been fantastic for us in finding our way to retirement. And he just has a pure heart, and we just really enjoy Billy and have a lot of trust in Billy.
Just by working with all the team members, and everybody's been so accommodating and informative for us, and I think we've gotten in line to where it's going to be a successful retirement for us.
Very early customer of Billy's. I met him just by chance, took a chance. He's given us some new ideas about things we should be doing, and we're very happy we ran into him, or we chose him when we did.
By joining with Fundamental Wealth Designs, they help me plan for the future, and I feel much more comfortable now about approaching retirement and that I'll actually be able to retire when I want to. Billy's very knowledgeable and very personable, So I would definitely recommend Fundamental Wealth Designs.
When I met with Billy, he made it like so clear. It made me feel comfortable. He made me feel like, I didn't have to be a millionaire to retire comfortably and do exactly what I wanted to do. So I'm just ecstatic about working with them. And, there's times where I literally feel like I'm at home when I walk into their office.
He has our best interest at heart, and I know that while we are getting ready to retire, that's not something that we really need to worry about.
And I can't stop talking about it. So, yes, I definitely recommend it.
Like, we're confident in his
We can
decision.
do what we want. We don't have to worry about
We don't have to worry
about the money. We don't have to worry about the money.
Yeah.
Welcome back to Retirement Designed Differently with financial advisor Billy Voiles of Fundamental Wealth Designs right here in Minnesota. We're having a spirited conversation about estate planning, how it's kind of one of the newer landscapes. We're living longer than we ever have in retirement. Now, as a financial advisory firm, I know that you're not necessarily putting together the legal documents. You are looking at things like beneficiary designations on all of the accounts, starting to have that conversation of where do you want things to go? But then the privacy protection, the tools, do you continue that? Do you facilitate that conversation with other professionals? Do we do that in-house? How does that work?
Yeah, and then we have partners that we work with, dedicated partners that are the attorneys that finalize the documents and the documentation when it comes to estate planning. But part of it is this concept of like, you hear it termed in different ways, like legacy planning versus estate planning. And I think when we think about legacy planning, it's really like, how do we set up this concept of generational wealth planning? So then inside generational wealth planning is tax planning, right? And tax planning really also relates back to estate planning, which relates back to how you're invested, which relates back to whether or not you do a Roth or not to Roth. So, and again, when we say it, like in Minnesota, the estate taxes start at $3 million. It's not a high threshold to get into state estate tax levels in Minnesota. And it's non-portable, if you will. So it's not like each spouse has $3 million. It's the one single estate has the $3 million exemption. So anything above that can start to get taxed at a 13% rate. So when we consider Roth conversions, really later on in life, if you're at $3.5 million and you still have a $2.5 million IRA that's going to be taxed to death when you pass it to the next generation, maybe we do want to get more aggressive with Roth planning, because not only do we want to pay those taxes in advance, but we can actually reduce, your estate value, pay your taxes early in a more efficient way. So it's all related to each other. Yeah. We talk about this all the time, that everything becomes combined. Your investments, your income plan, your tax plan, your estate and legacy plan, your healthcare plan. Those are the 5 areas that always need to be talking to each other, because when you pull an investment out, it impacts taxes. When you set up a certain strategy, it's going to impact the legacy and estate planning, and it's just great to make sure it's all in one place.
Another thing about the book, To Roth or Not to Roth, as we're talking about estate planning here, as you said, by doing some of these conversions, if one of the things that you're thinking about, how do I maximize it for the next generation, by you paying the taxes, by you taking care of that tax burden, your heirs then are allowed to inherit that money tax-free. It doesn't get added onto their taxes. And so you're saying that by doing Roth conversion, that is then not included in the estate as far as hitting up to that $3 million?
Yeah, no, the Roth conversion is included in the estate, but you're paying your taxes in advance. So you might lower yourself under, so you don't get an additional 13% taxed on that, because the kids are going to end up paying the tax on the IRA that they inherit. And there's another rule change there that we should talk about, right?
Okay.
They got rid of the stretch IRA in 2020 with the Secure Act, and we talk about it in our workshops. And if you want to go to one of our workshops, you can visit the website, check it out. We host them all over the cities. The latest topic right now is taxes, inflation, and market volatility. We're going to talk about how to save money on taxes, how to address inflation, and how to prepare yourself to sort of handle market volatility. But that's where it's just really important to be able to sort of tackle, that tax perspective. But yeah, the Roth is included in the state. But if you do a conversion and pay taxes out of your conversion, that way you're paying taxes in advance, you're avoiding passing on that IRA. So in 2020, what they did was they eliminated the stretch IRA. And the stretch IRA was something where you could take a small minimum distribution, but you could let the balance of that account defer for the rest of your life. So you could have got 30 or 40 years worth of tax deferral on the balance of that IRA before 2020. After 2020, unfortunately, now they shrunk that time frame to now the IRS makes you take the whole distribution within a 10-year time frame. Okay? So that was a major tax law change that impacted legacy planning, impacted estate planning, impacted tax planning, everything all into one. And I got to tell you a story in a minute, but
Yeah.
there's dangers in that too.
Yeah. Well, no, I want to hear your story because
Yeah.
so the perspective on this is that you might say, well, all of the kids will take care of it. It's all right. You know, they'll pay their tithe. They'll be grown-ups, and you know they're going to be able to inherit. But the difference is, let's say you're 80 or 90 when you pass away. That means your kids are 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s themselves.
Yeah.
They could be in some very high earnings years or have some high income withdrawal that they're already doing in their own retirement. Now, gratefully, they receive money from yourself. Now they got to pull it out in 10 years.
Yeah.
So that can also increase, which means they're going to go up in tax brackets, which means they pay more in taxes.
Yeah.
You know, it's a great thing, but this is why we've got to, and we always say the word plan, but we've really got to plan out taxes.
Yeah.
It's not just something we can keep kicking down the road and saying, well, tax deferred's the way to go. We want to plan for it. What's your story?
And this inherited IRA
Yeah.
is the concept. And I think if you have an inherited IRA out there, you really need to listen to this, okay? So when you inherit an IRA and it's been your parent passed away after 2020, now the rule is you have to liquidate that whole thing within 10 years. If your parent or whoever passed the asset to you was already taking distributions, then you need to be taking your RMD every single year. You need to follow through with the fact that they were already taking distributions and you need to start taking distributions. If they did not take distributions, this provides the trap because you're not forced to take distributions on an annual basis. So you might be just deferring that balance because you don't have to take distributions. So I ran into an account, they passed away in 2021. It's a couple $100,000, but now in this 5-year time frame, it's grown to $300,000. Well, it's 2026. Now they only have 5 years left to take out the entire account. If they didn't run into us, it's very likely that they would have let that $300,000 continue to grow. And in the year 2031, where we don't know what tax rates are going to be, and maybe that account is $400,000 at that time, it's likely, with Minnesota tax rates and federal tax, they could have been at a 40% tax rate, taking that $500,000 balance and paying $200,000 in taxes. So if you do own an inherited IRA, this is very specific, but there are very strict guidelines as far as taxation, and there are very specific distribution strategies that you need to be using in order to maximize that inherited IRA. But also, if you have a large IRA and you're figuring out, how do I position my assets to leave the biggest legacy possible to the next generation? This call is for you right now. Those are the folks that should make this phone call. Talk to us about that inherited IRA or talk to us about legacy planning for the next generation. Give us a call. The number is 888-379-1846. We can talk about your inherited IRA tax distribution strategy.
And if you would prefer not to have to call on the phone, you can pick up your phone, then use the camera function. You can point it at the QR code. Click on it, it'll take you over to the website. You can schedule your own appointment right there. More with Billy Voiles right after this.
I went into real estate in college. Part of the reason why I went into real estate is I got a phone call from my father informing me that he had cancer at the time. And my father was an HR director for corporate America. Got up early at 6, out the door at 6, and home at 6:30, and traveled. And I termed it that he worked for the man, and I wasn't going to work for the man. I was going to go get rich in real estate. But little did I know, the markets in Michigan were crashing and everything else. And so back to the fundamentals I went, which was go to school, get a job, work hard, get promoted, start saving money, and go from there. And the first job I got out of college was actually in financial services. And for the past 12 years, I had spent 1.5 million miles on an airplane to work with advisors. Financial advisors were my clients, and I was teaching them and consulting with them on how to grow their businesses. And I really just had to get off the road. I couldn't be what I wanted to be as a father to my family and as a husband to my wife by being on the road as much as I was. So the crazy next step in after having a 4th kid was quitting my job and launching this business, which is Fundamental Wealth Design. So it was a bit of an abrupt right turn, but it was all for the right reasons.
Welcome back to Retirement Design Differently with financial advisor 𝗃𝗠 𝗃𝗀𝗇𝗆. He is the founder of Fundamental Wealth Designs. He helps folks just like you every single day in their offices. Well, during the week. On the weekend, he's a dad. Just like all the financial advisors are, they're taking care of their families. We want you to take care of your family. But we help you with retirement planning strategies. You can call the phone number down on the bottom of the screen. You can get started on your own retirement design anytime you want to. You don't have to wait for the end of the program. You can start dialing that right now. There are folks standing by. Billy, I wanted to ask you one more thing as we're talking about new rules to retirement planning, and you came up with a whole new definition of ROI. I've always understood ROI to be return on investment. You have another way of looking at ROI.
Yeah, I think when you're 30 years old, when you're 35 years old, 40, even 45, maybe even 50, you think of ROI as what is the return on my investment, right? And that is an important number. Still, at any point in life, it's an important number. But as you transition into retirement, it's all about income, right? It's all about how much income can your investments provide back, at least for our families we work with. They really just want to go out and enjoy their life and travel and spoil their grandkids and get their house exactly the way that they like, they want it. We got a lot of remodeling going on and everything else going on right now. So they really want to shift ROI, return on investment, to the concept of how reliable is your income. So reliability of income. So nice. ROI shifts from return on investment to reliability of income. And again, it goes back to our various strategies which offer you secure income strategies in retirement where you don't have to worry. Again, we talk about those paychecks, that salary, replacement salary, hitting your mailbox each and every month. And when I say mailbox, it's electronic. But you get the point of it right out there. You get the point of this
new rules to
money,
retirement planning,
right? Everything, we hope everything's electronic. What's really weird today, and it's an odd thing, but we do a lot of 401k rollovers. You have these old 401ks out there. And, these companies, they still like to send checks, which is crazy. That's like the one part of everything else pretty much works electronically, but these 401k providers like to be like, you know what, Spike? We're going to send a check to your address on file for $1.6 million. And people are like, oh my gosh, really? It's like, yes, it's a crazy thing, but we do it all the time. And, we like to take care of those old 401ks.
The concepts from return on investment to reliability of income. If you don't mind, a little rubber meets the road, an actual person. We had an email that came in, said he's about 59 years old right now, construction project manager. Says he'd like to be able to retire by 62 or 63. So, heavy work, right? A lot of your back, a lot of your knees. They've got about $850,000 in his 401k. They got about another couple $100,000 in various savings. But he's worried about the market volatility that he's seen over the last year or two. Wondering if he should move everything over to cash, wondering how he turns this into an income stream. I don't have a pension plan.
Yeah.
Is this kind of what we're talking about here? He's got return on investment. He's saved. It's grown over the last 3-4 decades. But now he needs to know how to turn it into income. How do you do it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly the type of people that have been calling out to the show, that have been coming into the office. They are in that 2 to 3, 4 years away from retirement, trying to figure out, is now a good time to shift assets. And I do think that that's an appropriate time frame, because if we look at past history of recessions and you look at markets from peak to trough to peak and sort of like how long does it take for a market to recovery, sometimes that is 5 years in between where you hit a market high, it goes through a lull, and then all of a sudden takes a while. If you look at 2000 to 2004 or 2008 all the way out to 2012, so there have been various times where during a 3 to 4 year time frame, you never recover from the top of the market all the way back to the top. So you could actually retire with less in 3 years, which is a really frustrating strategy. Obviously, you don't want to go through that type of thing. So I think approaching and figuring out what makes sense for that person, right? You're 59 years old. We take a look at 62. We got a Social Security decision to make at 62.
Oh, yeah.
Do we turn your Social Security on at 62? We also have health care considerations. Because that gentleman was 62 years old, we have to figure out what our health care costs going to be from 62 to 65, and we can do some estimates on that because we do help our clients with the health care in between. And then all of a sudden it's, how do you reposition that $750,000 or $850,000 into an income stream, right? And in that situation, I think it was $350,000 that it was like, let's peel that off and start to de-risk that portion. But then we can still leave $400,000 to $500,000 invested for more of that long-term growth, because we're still going to need that money. Because if the markets do continue to increase like they have the past 3 years or so, it's been a pretty darn good run. So if those years continue to be good years, we want to participate in that. And we want the ability to be able to grow. But it's all about everything having a purpose, right? And everything going back to the whole concept of you need a plan. And we've had so many people coming into the office lately that just say, you know what, Billy, we're ready. We really are ready. We've been watching you for a while. We just need a plan. Whether their advisor's not providing them or whether they just haven't worked with an advisor before and they really just desire a plan forward to figure out when they can retire, how they need to position their assets to put them in the right position to pay the least amount of taxes and maximize your spending. And spend your money, enjoy it, have a great retirement. That's what we want to do.
Billy, thank you for your education today. Thank you for watching the program. Now what you can do is call that phone number on the bottom of the screen so you can get started on your own retirement design. It is no cost to you. There's no obligation to it. Or if you want to, you can scan this QR code over here with your phone, click on it, and it'll take you over to the website. You can schedule your own time right there. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next week.